Welcome to the Somatic Coaching Academy podcast with Ani and Brian. Join us as we explore the art and science of trauma-sensitive somatic practices and tools to strengthen your practice as a coach, therapist, or holistic professional. Master the art of motivating even the most challenging clients when you'll understand how to tap into and unlock your client's complete holistic intelligence. If you want to learn the most cutting-edge, research-supported skills for personal and professional mastery, you've come to the right place. Let's get this conversation started.
Hi, and welcome to the Somatic Coaching Academy podcast, your place to tap into your and your client's complete human intelligence. I'm Ani Anderson.
And I'm Brian Trzaskos.
And we just want to thank everybody for the amazing reviews and emails we've been getting about the podcast. We are so excited that you're as excited as we are about getting the podcast rolling. And I really want to let you know that, it matters so much, your reviews and your emails and sharing it with friends. You're the person that helps to develop the community here. And so you doing those things means not only the world to us, but it matters so much for the community. So thank you very much. And before we get rolling with episode 7, Brian, I just want to also mention that it's cross-mapping season.
Yep.
And so cross-mapping is a fantastic way to start your somatic coach training journey. And the cross-mapping programs are open for enrollment for January and April 2024. So now is the right time to have a conversation with our team. If you've been thinking and wondering, I wonder if this is for me. I wonder if somatic coaching is for me. And cross-mapping is a fantastic way to get started with us. So have a conversation with our team if you've been thinking about that for yourself.
Yeah. As we kick off today, episode, again, I think it's episode 7. Yay. Using somatic coaching for emotional dysregulation.
Yeah, as we talk about emotional dysregulation, we're going to speak about it through the context of a story. And in full transparency, Brian, this is a story that's a conglomeration of stories because we have so many students and clients in our practice that are working on emotional dysregulation. And this is something I've definitely worked on myself. So we're going to talk about Amanda's story as we talk about this and be able to pull in different aspects. People who are looking at getting help with emotional dysregulation, they don't call a somatic coach because they're like, I'm emotionally dysregulated most of the time. So what are some signs and symptoms that you might be a person who's having some stuff with emotional dysregulation? I think that'd be a great way to start.
Yeah, well, I think the number one sign is that you're actually not getting the thing that you want to get in your life.
Yeah.
Right. So you have an idea, you would like a better relationship, you want to have a better business, whatever that means, right? It could be more clients coming in, it could be bringing more revenue into the business, but in the relationship, it could be a better, more open relationship with your partner or your kids or your parents or your neighbor, whoever it is. It could also be better health. Right. Could have health goals. And I think the sign that potentially emotional dysregulation is getting in the way is that you're just not getting what you want. It seems like it's getting farther away and you're just not getting there. It's just not happening.
I love that you're talking about that, Brian, because with coaching, we are talking about what do we want to achieve? What do we want to grow into? What do we want to have, be, and do? And so there is this idea that I can't do what I want to do. And there's this idea that I can't have what I want to have. A lot of our clients tell us, I'm not getting the thing that I want to get. I'm not doing the thing I want to do. I'm also not being the person I really want to be in my life.
Yeah.
And man, they're stuck. And you know what a lot of people say is, I've been in therapy for this for a really long time. And so there's some shame around it as well, because it's not that they haven't tried. And by the way, it's not that they haven't broken through some things. People have done a lot of work a lot of times when they get to the place where they're seeing us. And so there can be this idea that I've already done so much work. We have to remind people about being in a beginner's mind. Like, let's just imagine like you're starting fresh, but there can also be some shame to get through because I've been working on this for such a long time. I'm a grown up. Why can't I do this? And that kind of thing.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting, Ani, you're starting to talk about some emotions, right? Like shame and guilt, potentially anger, right? So these are all emotions that people experience that get in the way a lot of times of us, again, creating the kind of life that we want to create, right? And I think, our our take here at the Somatic Coaching Academy around, let's say, goal achievement is because, and a lot of coaches are like, that's your goal, like we need to achieve that, that's what we're going after, and I think that's important. And at the same time, what we believe is that the journey on and route to that goal is actually even more important, because it's really about who you're becoming on the way to that goal, such that when you arrive at the goal, you're a changed person. It's not like just the goal changes you, you become changed on the way to experiencing that goal.
And it's that actually, that idea right there that brings the goal to us, or shall I say
Hmm.
reveals the goal to us naturally, because natural laws would have us know that what we want is already in our lives. We can't see it. I think that's one of the most frustrating things about emotional dysregulation, especially when people are
Mm,
learning the natural laws, is like
yeah.
they know what they want is actually there somewhere, they can't see it. But anyway, the goal reveals itself as we do the work, and then it feels almost like magic.
Yeah, yeah. I also like to use this analogy of like driving cross country. I think that's an analogy that a lot of people use in these kinds of things. And how does it relate to emotional dysregulation? I think with what you're talking about too, honey. So we live on the East Coast, and say we wanted to go to California. So that's our goal, right? Our goal is getting to California. And so we point the car in that direction en route to our goal. And then we're driving together, and somewhere around like Cleveland, we get in a lot of traffic and there's construction, and we start to argue, and the Google Maps goes down, kind of thing. And we both get emotionally dysregulated, and I take the wrong exit. And then pretty soon we're on our way to Florida and not California anymore. And so a lot of times I see that's how kind of emotional dysregulation kind of shows up. It's just like all of a sudden, boom, it shows up, become dysregulated, and then we make a choice that doesn't actually get us closer to California. It puts us on a sidetrack,
Right.
and then we're going in a different direction. And then halfway through Louisiana, we're like, wait, whoa, blah, blah, blah. We're supposed to be going to California. What are we doing down here? Sort of thing.
Or you're going around and
Oh,
around and around.
yeah.
Remember that trip?
Yeah, right. I remember that trip
We
too.
were in Canada and we couldn't read the signs, and we were going around and around and around. But emotional dysregulation can feel like
Yeah.
that too. So this person that we're talking about, Amanda,
Mhm.
right? So she comes for somatic coaching, and there's some hallmark signs that she's probably dealing with emotional dysregulation. Anger is one of them, Brian. So
Mhm.
experiencing anger, and by the way, she probably doesn't want to feel angry.
Yeah.
So I'm getting angry with my team, getting angry with my family, and that's not who I want to be. But man, they're driving me
Yeah.
crazy.
Right.
There's that not getting what we want. There's also this shutdown that can
Yeah.
happen, right? Where we get confused, or we get just like frozen or depleted, blank. I don't know what to do
Mm.
kind of thing that happens. What are the other kinds of emotions that show up? I mean, sometimes it's rage, it's grief. Sometimes there's like a massive amount of grief that comes up. But a lot of times it's like that
Yeah,
anger,
what I
that
see is that,
shutdown.
and that in combination, right? It's like the
Yeah,
the the angry outburst is then followed by intense personal shame around having the angry outburst,
100%.
right? So we have this huge explosion of anger, and then we shut down because we feel ashamed about our what we did or our behavior around that.
Projection.
Yeah, but projection is another large one. Yep.
Big, 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 big. And I think one of the interesting things about projection is we think that we're, I'm going to say, justified. We think that the reality that we see about what's going on is the reality, and we think it's the other person. And it disallows us for having any opportunity to do something,
Hmm.
because it's very disempowering. It's in somebody else's hands. So Amanda comes for somatic coaching. She's leading a team. She is really jammed up. She's not getting what she wants in her business. She's not getting what she wants in her personal life. And she is angry with her team all the time. She doesn't want to be reactive, but she is. Brian, what's going on in the nervous system? What is dysregulation?
Right. Yeah. So let's talk about emotional dysregulation and let's talk about like nervous system dysregulation. So, what's happening when someone has an emotion, by the way, is that they're really, if you want to deconstruct that a little bit, they're in sensory overload. They're in sensory overload. And we talk about nervous system dysregulation, we're really talking about sensory dysregulation. And a lot of this work comes from the window of tolerance model. So, where there's an optimal window of regulation, if you will, or what we call nervous system arousal in the middle. And then there's hyper arousal above that window where we feel really activated. So, in other words, there's a lot of like foot on the gas sort of thing, fight or flights happening, lots of cognitive disorganization, but also a lot of hypervigilance, a lot of activation, that sort of thing. And then below the optimal window of arousal is what we call hypoarousal. And this is kind of like that shutdown response, or some people, the immobility response, where we're experiencing more like cognitive is just shut
It's
down,
like, I don't know what to do,
slow movements,
cloudy.
confusion, lethargy, that sort of thing. So, on either side of this optimal window of regulation, we have dysregulation above or dysregulation below that window.
Right.
And so we could certainly like throw some emotions into those things. Like I would say anger is like a hyper
Right.
dysregulation, right? Hyper arousal. Whereas depression and shame would be hypoarousal. They're going to be below. But if you think about it, the emotion, the nervous system, the raw nervous system does not, there's no sensors in your body that pick up emotions from the environment. They pick up interoceptive senses. So what's interoceptive senses? It's things like sharp, dull, light, heavy, like picks up senses, and then those sensations are brought into the brain from either the internal body or from the external world. So there's no anger doesn't come into the body, like shame doesn't come into the body. Emotions are produced in our physiology by raw materials of sensory input.
So we like to say at the Somatic Coaching Academy that emotions are two things. They're thoughts plus
Mhm.
sensations. And this helps us to identify how we can very practically work with emotions in
Mhm.
terms of nervous system dysregulation, because otherwise, where do emotions fit and how do you
Right.
work
Yeah.
with them? And by the way, they're a little bit tangible, maybe, but not. And they are completely wrapped up in the narrative, we could say,
Yeah.
right? The story that we have about our lives, what it seems like life is. And all of that, of course, is based on how we grew up to think,
Mhm.
to learn how to think and learn how to feel. It is an incredibly messy ball of yarn.
Yeah.
But if you see emotions as two things, the narrative or the thoughts, the stories, and the
Mhm.
sensations, all of a sudden we have something very practical to
To
work
work
with.
with. Yeah, exactly. And there's a lot of people doing a lot of great work around emotions out there. I just want
Yeah.
to say that, right? So there's a lot of people doing great work around anger, resolution, a lot of people doing a lot of great work around shame and guilt and all those kinds of things. So like hats off to all of you and all of us that are doing that kind of work. Like more of that is needed, certainly.
And it's amazing, right? Because it allows us to come at the unraveling of our emotions from intellectually based, kind of
Mhm.
top down approaches, and from the body based bottom up approaches so that we can really unravel and untangle these
Yeah,
things.
yeah, and certainly, yeah, absolutely. And there's no one thing for everybody, right? We're all going
Yeah.
to be met. So I can just only speak from my personal experience. So from my personal experience, when I spent a lot of time trying to unravel anger and resentment and depression, just like trying to unravel it from that standpoint, like as soon as I say I'm trying to unravel anger, what is all automatically included is the context in which the anger happened. It's like that's what we're talking about with the story, the other people involved, the other things involved, the past traumas around it, all those kinds of things. And then that unraveling gets all of a sudden huge. It's like a big mess. It's like almost impossible to wade through all of it. And that's why, in our experience, if we just say, let's take that context and narrative and just kind of like not throw it away, but just put it to the side for a moment. And let's go to the raw data of what you are labeling anger, what you are labeling shame, what you are labeling depression, and work with the nervous system directly itself in terms of that sensation. We have found that that is a really powerful and efficient way to help people get back into regulation, come back into nervous system regulation.
Right. Before we talk about that, can we just talk about Amanda and a
Yeah,
little bit of
absolutely. Please.
healing
Yep.
work? Because what you just said is like the arrow that goes right to the target of what we're trying to do with the emotional work, and why so many people tell us, I've been to therapy for 30 years, but this one session was so much more helpful.
Mhm.
And therapy is awesome and needed too. Don't get me wrong. So Amanda comes in, she's talking about all this frustration and emotional dysregulation. And we do a session with her where we identify where she's feeling that
Mhm.
anger and projection, where she's feeling it and what it feels like. And then we help Amanda to understand that that sensation is happening in her subconscious mind, which includes and is her body. And the subconscious mind doesn't know how old you are.
Mhm.
The subconscious mind doesn't know what year it is. It doesn't tell
Mhm.
time. It doesn't know how old you are. And so we just have her tap into and feel that sensory aspect. And I'm remembering a time that I had one of these healing kinds of sessions with somebody where we tapped into the subconscious, not knowing how old they were. And it was like, I'm 2.
Mm. Mhm.
I'm 2 years old and I'm throwing a tantrum. And that's awesome because we just tapped into something with the sensory system that, from an intellectual standpoint, nobody had gotten at for years,
Mhm.
ever, right? But because we were identifying in the subconscious directly through a sensation, where you feel it, what it feels like, and then I feel like I'm 2, and we were able to help this person have their temper tantrum, and then they can actually start to integrate the work. But it was like a skipping record.
Mm. Yeah. Right.
It
Yep.
was just skipping. You need to remember that.
Yep.
You gotta just like lift up the thing,
Mhm.
the arm,
Yep.
right, on the record. That's all we had to do was kind of like, oh, the record skipping, and lift up the record. So, very often in terms of emotional dysregulation, there is a component of like healing work that can be done really easily and completely with somatic coaching
Mhm.
that then allows you to continue to move forward.
Yeah, right. So just a little more framework here. There's 4 steps to our somatic coaching process: become aware of, decode, modify, and reframe. And really, what Ani's talking about are kind of the first 2 steps: that become aware of and decoding. What really the a core functioning or root cause of that emotional or sensory dysregulation actually is. And until we understand that and can come to sense of clarity around it, we can't really clear it out in order to move on to remodifying
Yeah.
how the nervous system actually works. So we have to understand, where's that dysregulation come from, like address that skipping record sort of thing. Once we've kind of freed that arm off the record, now we can make a conscious choice to enlist and employ some tools and strategies to come back into that emotional window of regulation. So once someone's in that sensory regulation, just moving someone's sensory system back into that optimal window of arousal, so now they're sensory regulated, they have to actually then name a different emotion because it's a different state,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, well, you're reminding me that Amanda is the kind of person who goes to yoga. She meditates, she goes on silent retreats,
Mhm.
right? She eats really good food. Like, this is the kind of thing that is her lifestyle,
Mm.
Brian. And so if we're just trying to regulate the nervous system, we haven't decoded,
Yeah, right,
and that's not therapy, by the way,
right.
right? So we decode what's happening in the subconscious, then we can actually move forward. And the person will actually experience a different state
Mhm.
in a very different way. And then from that place, when you work on helping somebody to regulate their nervous system and start to work that as a muscle, right? With like a way of life and exercises you can use and somatic practices and stuff like that, then it can actually be a sustainable, regulated way of
Right.
being.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So the idea is when someone's experiencing that emotional dysregulation, we're not trying to change the emotion. We're trying to shift the from dysregulation into regulation. And again, once someone's in that regulated state, they will experience a different emotion. So we're not trying to change the emotion, we're going underneath it, going deeper than the emotion.
And that's what happens to Amanda. She has this session where she realizes it's her inner 2-year-old. She starts to work on the nervous system regulation things in her own life. The problems that she thought were the problems aren't even
Mhm.
problems anymore. The way that she was seeing reality, what she was seeing out of her eyes and sensing with her ears and all of her senses is different.
Mhm.
Right? She's
Yeah.
experiencing life differently. And that's part of the magic and beauty of what can happen.
Mhm.
So when we're trying to fix the problem that we think is the problem, when we're emotionally dysregulated, the
Right.
problem is actually emotional dysregulation.
Mhm.
I was just having a conversation with a client that's a couple, right?
Mhm.
And leadership team. And they were talking about some challenges they were having during meetings. And we very quickly came to realize that the actual problem wasn't the people. The actual problem wasn't the goals. It wasn't the
Mhm.
strategy. The problem was their nervous system dysregulation. And
Yeah.
when they started to get a check on that, their meetings started to improve and they
Yep.
started to have very different,
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Because just what I was saying, emotional dysregulation oftentimes has to do with the relationships that we're a part of, and so I would just have to say I'm so grateful for you in my life, Ani, because you're a blessing for us to be able to do that work together. And I know not everyone has that same support and experience in their life to be able to work on that
Oh, well,
with their
thank you.
partner.
Thank you, Brian.
Mm,
When you said that, the first thing I thought of was what a gift because I have experienced intense and a lot of emotional dysregulation for myself, and it's
mm,
one of the reasons why we've tested
mhm.
out all of these strategies and tools.
All
Right?
tested in our own
They're
kitchen,
they're tested.
literally kitchen tested, literally, yeah, literally in the kitchen.
Right, but it's true. We're not coming to you with this information because we do it right all the time.
Mm, mhm,
We're coming to you with this information because we use the tools, because we're
mhm,
actually human beings who actually experience things and use the tools to help to,
mhm.
figure out life. And we all need help with that.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, that's one thing that Amanda actually discovers on the other side of her emotional dysregulation. Once she regulates her nervous system, she finds out that everybody's living a human experience and we need to help each other
Mhm.
to be better human beings. And what's on the other side of that is a lot of really awesome human connection.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So if you find that you struggle with emotional dysregulation from time to time, what I'd love to leave you with from this episode is become aware of that
Yeah.
first step,
Become
Brian.
aware of. Yep.
Pay attention and notice what emotions you feel like you're having and say to yourself, where do I feel that in my body? And what does it feel like?
Mhm.
And you've already started something really powerful.
Yep. Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed.
So thanks for joining us for this episode. And we'll see you next time.
Yep.
Thank you for listening to this episode. We hope that this conversation will help you improve your practice and change the way you think about your work, your clients, and yourself. Continue your exploration of trauma-sensitive somatic coaching by listening to more podcast episodes at somaticcoachingacademy.com. You could be the trusted guide that people turn to help them with their most challenging situations and to reach their most precious goals. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.